so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
In very sunny San Diego. Pretty cool for you to be with me.
It's great to be here.
I love that we are outdoor and outside.
Totally.
Also because you are the one who brought the conferences outside and outdoor. Can you tell me about that concept?
Yeah, I mean, having grown up in Chicago and in a place where weather was always not something, like you had a couple months a year that you really enjoyed the weather and the rest of the time you spent hiding from it. Getting to California, it was striking to me, I kept asking people, how come we don't have more operable doors or outdoor space? And everyone kind of looked at me like, why? I said, well, how come so few people drive around with their windows up? I said, this weather is perfect. I always have my windows down. I always have my windows open in the house. In the office, I want to prop the doors open. So I started by starting to put roll-up doors on buildings just to be able to open the doors and bring the air in and make you feel like you're outside. And then we went to, well, let's create outdoor spaces to meet and work. And so we started with a meeting space. It was really simple, a table outside. Then we went to desks and we set up six desks outside. Same setup as indoors. And we just put a canopy similar to, the shade we're sitting under right now to keep the glare off. We worked through, you got to figure out bugs, you got to figure out wind, so we worked through all those things and came up with what was a really comfortable setup. And we found very quickly that people would spend, if they spent 2 hours indoors, 2 hours outdoors, and we asked people to try and do it back to back and then talk about the difference. It was tremendous, the difference between being indoors and out, always leaning towards how much more positive it was to be outdoors, how much more energy people felt like they had, how much better they retained knowledge and information and listened. And they just would say, I just felt like I had actually done exercise or done something that brought energy to me instead of taking energy away from me, which to me was all the reason I needed to think about, we needed more of this. We need more outdoor space wherever we can get it.
And I think we're seeing the trend really picking up. Like you see organization, companies building almost rainforest inside their building, which seems counterintuitive. Like nature is just outside, open the door, it's outside, you don't have to bring it inside. But there is the idea of human being, we want to control the environment.
Right.
So we want to bring it inside, so we prevent the rain, we prevent mosquitoes, we prevent any other bugs. So do you see that trend also happening?
Oh, 100%. And I think, so one of the other big things I didn't talk about being outdoors, you got to have technology and you need Wi-Fi. And a lot of companies struggle with putting Wi-Fi outdoors because then it's more accessible to people who are outside. So, but all those elements, even the ones that I'm talking about in Northern California that are pretty easy to control, the rest of the country, the rest of the world, that very few places have the fortune of that weather. So to your point, there's more to control. And so I think it's about how do you create that something that feels like you're outdoors even when you're not. And it's all coming to a place of it feels far more human and relatable than a glass box. So typical office building is a hermetically sealed box, and then we put conference rooms inside of them, which are acoustically sealed and mechanically sealed from the HVAC perspective. So it's a box inside of a box. And then we spend hours, when you think back pre-pandemic, if you had most people during the course of an 8 or 10 hour day, 6 of those hours at least were in conference rooms because they weren't sitting at desks, they were in conference rooms. So, and you wonder why you're sick all the time. You wonder why you just don't feel great. You think about going home at the end of the day and people would say, I am exhausted. I feel like I worked out all day. And like, why do you feel that way? And it's not just the stress of work, but it's the stress of the environment that's doing that to you. And I think the other thing that's happened now is with the pandemic, with people realizing that we already knew it was easy to get sick. Someone shows up to a meeting with cold and everyone's like, oh boy, now I'm gonna have a cold. I know what's gonna happen here. But the pandemic taught us that it's of paramount importance to not create that situation. So again, find ways to make people feel comfortable meeting, feel like they're outdoors, but have lots of air circulation, have a sense of openness so that you don't feel like you're in a box inside of a box.
Exactly. And you brought something that reminded me of a story. Before the pandemic, we were starting to measure the CO2 level inside the conference room. And it would get crazy to see that there were really important people making very important decisions, and their brain after 30 minutes was out because of the concentration of CO2. And you're like, how can we function? How can we make proper decision when our brain is so fogged almost?
No, and think about all the times people would get up. Hold on, I'll be back in a minute. I need some caffeine. And it's especially after lunch, the 12 to 5, 6, 1 to 6. It was a commonplace thing that people would be tired, starting to doze, and even people who are talking are like getting sleepy as they're talking. And it's like, but to your point, it's a science experiment. It's not your fault. It didn't matter how much sleep you got last night. You put enough carbon dioxide in that room, you're going to fall asleep. And you're right. I think but it was the mold we had created, and you and I've talked about this before. Human behavior, we can endure a lot, and we do endure a lot. And even if it's terrible, it's like, why are you doing it? I don't know. It's just what I do. Yeah. This is just how we meet. But it really came down to, we made that happen because we wanted the privacy and the control over who hears what's said. That is the first reason why you're in that room. Not because you enjoy being in that conference room. It's a manner of controlling a conversation and controlling the dispersion of information. And I think that is another fundamental piece of this. Take away the doors, take things outside, have more open conversations. All those things change at once.
And I love that you brought kind of like the priorities we had back then, because it just shows that priorities have shifted. It's weird for me to hear that, we shouldn't have built it this way. Back then, we had those goals we wanted to hit, so the design was here to help us achieve those goals. The goals have shifted, but it's really interesting for me to see that we had amazing offices. We're trying to get better, but already in the span of a generation, like our parents didn't get to work in those amazing Silicon Valley tech company offices, and now we're trying to get better. We barely had the time to experience it.
No, and you're right. Not only did our parents not experience that, but 90% of the world has never experienced anything like the Silicon Valley offices. I mean, I remember when I first moved out here and thinking, I will never take this for granted. Yeah. This is shocking. My first breakfast, the first day on the 5th floor, we had a cafe on the 5th floor of a building with views of, like, up in the redwoods with views of the mountains, and I'm sitting outside eating like a granola acai bowl or something, the most California thing I could find, and I'm thinking, what in the world? Like, this is unbelievable. And everyone's walking around like it's not a big deal. Everyone's walking around like, oh, this is just what you do. Most people don't understand this. And to your point, we had just gotten where it was always trying to optimize and make the better experience, make a better quality product. And it was really about the race to hire better people and to retain them once you had them, and just creating more appealing environments than your neighbor. And it was one factor. It wasn't the only factor, but it was one factor. And now it's a completely different conversation. Now it's I have options in life. I don't have to come to work to do work. I can work from wherever I want. So is this really any more about just providing more and more of the same thing, more amenities, more space? I don't think it is. I think it's about providing different things, creating a place where people can create connections, where they can foster relationships, where they can build culture. All those things that we're really lacking right now and missing from all working from home. To me, that's what's really exciting about this. But we gotta like stop and stop trying to connect this to the before. This is after, and it's a different equation we're solving for now.
Yeah, exactly. It's complete different equation. And here, the mission that you talked about of like not taking it for granted or knowing that others don't have that is an underlying mission that we have. I know that when I entered that space, the workplace world, I was an engineer back then. I had nothing to do with the workplace, but I've always hated the office. Wherever I worked, in Europe, in Hong Kong, in Brazil, people hated being in the office and they hated their work because of that. And I was like 25 years old and I was thinking, am I going to hate my work forever? Like, is it just the doom of our life? We hate our work, we hate our job, we hate our manager. And suddenly I arrived in Silicon Valley and it's wonderland. People love their job, they love their manager, they love the company. And so naively I thought, it's because they have amazing offices. And then I got to know that the offices are a translation of the culture, the trust, the intention we get to be together, or the mission we're trying to achieve. But there's a world outside of not liking your job. There's a world where you have the right to love your job. And I think the conversation has shifted towards that today.
No, I agree. And a lot of people are, because they've realized they have choice, because, and granted, the economy has had something to do with this. The economy has been really strong for a while now. People have options. There are lots of jobs. But I think the number of people that has gone from it's work, I work to live, as opposed to I live to work, that I think it's become kind of the norm, and even beyond the norm. The majority of people are living now and then they work, when it's convenient for them. And I think this is going to be about a big part of the challenge right now for organizations, for workplace organizations and companies, is how do you create a there for the workplace that compels people to want to participate in it, because it's a life choice.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to give you my time to not only plan my life, organize my life, make the time, come into the office, and I need to be rewarded for it. And not just because, you're giving me free things or you're giving me amenities, and because more and more companies are going to keep doing that. It's going to be more about, you've done this with such intentionality that I came in and said, I want to do that again. I want to come back as soon as I can, because that was so worth it. I feel the same way. So that going back to this idea of meeting outdoors and feeling like you left the meeting with more energy than you started, or you left that 2 hours of working. People come to the office, we want them to leave saying, I can't imagine not having come in today. I got so much out of being here. The question will become, how often do you do that? And I think it is completely okay for that answer to vary widely from one person to another. And for some people, that's going to be every week, and some people that's going to be every month, and some people that's going to be yearly. But I think there's going to be this sweet spot that emerges somewhere in the middle, where people come in on a more regular basis, really get value out of it, but they're valuing they value the investment they make, and the company says, your time is important to us. We don't want you wasting your time. And we acknowledge that if you came in every day, it would not only be a waste of your time, but it's a waste of our time. We want you to come in and leave thinking, that was completely worth it. I'm glad I did it. I want to do it again. And I know why I did it. And I think that's the key. Well, a lot of us in life have been, you're doing a lot of jobs. You're like, why did I just do that? What were those? I can't even remember what those meetings were about today. And I think it's happening right now on Zoom. It's happening online. People having so many meetings, being so hyper efficient that they don't actually know at the end of the day why they're so tired. And so I think bringing this back, as even if it just starts as a way to boost energy and to get people to feel energized from coming in and go, I want to do that again next week, because that was a highlight of my week. Yeah. Of all the stuff that's happened, I was not efficient. I had more work to do when I got back maybe, but it was worth it.
Yeah, and I love that people know more about how they feel, because suddenly our customers, the employees who join and come to our workplaces, with the pandemic, they became more aware of themselves and almost more educated of how they feel. Before I entered that world, I would go to a restaurant or another. I couldn't be able to tell why I felt great in this one and not great in this one. Mm-hmm. Now people know more, and also the intention is more clear. When you come to the office, this is what you can expect, this is what you are supposed to feel. If you don't feel it, then it's a problem for us that we need to fix. But we hope that you leave feeling like it was the highlight of your week. But having an educated crowd makes a very different job for us.
Oh, completely. And I think so you could have a very high-end restaurant with really fancy food. And if someone doesn't understand what went into making it, where it came from, the artistry and the craftsmanship and the skill involved in it, it might be lost on them. They look at it and say, this is tiny food. Why do I want to eat that? I'm still hungry. I think, to your point, the office experience, the in-office experience, and just workplace in general, whether you're home or in the office or any place else, is far more sophisticated. It was already getting more sophisticated, but overnight, it's become more sophisticated and way more complex. Yeah. There is no one size fits all. It's highly variable and it's dynamic. And the fact that it's so dynamic and so sophisticated means that we need to learn ourselves what we think is right, but we need to educate, to your point, users on how to use it, But then we have to be really, really good at getting feedback from them on what's working and what's not. And then we have to continuously adapt and evolve. So there is no way to know, well, this is the right answer. I'm going to spend a whole bunch of money, get it exactly right, and 2 years from now, it's still going to be doing what it needed to be doing. I mean, that was pretty much where we were at for decades. There were little nuanced evolutions over time, but it was basically the same thing. This is a sea change. It's fundamentally different, and we need to go through this period of the next few years of trying new ideas, trying new things out before we actually know what the solution is going to be. And your solution is going to be different than my solution, is going to be different than everyone else's solution. And that will go down all the way to a team level. Teams sitting next to each other may actually have different needs, and the workplace is going to have to solve for their different needs individually, which we never would have done before.
Yeah, exactly. And designing for different people, for different teams, is gonna be everything in the future. And I remember that I read one piece of feedback during the pandemic that really hurt me and hurt us as an industry, was reading that women and minorities don't want to come back to the office. Like, they are the population that doesn't want to come back to the office because they couldn't feel they could be their best self. They couldn't feel that it was designed for them. That hurt, because we were really trying to design for everybody, but for a one size fits all.
Right. And I think in the mission of trying to be as inclusive as possible in everything that you do and make people feel welcome, you really have to go the extra mile to have conversations with individuals directly who you're not accustomed to or have not historically been accustomed to designing for, thinking through all different types of people from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life. You've been designing for a typology, for an engineer or a salesperson.
Exactly.
It's got to be more granular. And then you have to look at not only at gender, not only at race, at age, and even where people come from and the cultural differences. I think the other thing you're going to see is the nuanced difference by location, by country, by city, and the sorts of norms that'll form around even days of the week or weeks of the month. That will vary by location. And I think, to your point earlier, you'll start to see discrepancies, but we're going to need to work really hard to tie those things together and accept that it is okay for them to be a little bit different, because they're focused on the people in that place and they're that hyper specific to their needs, which is way harder than anything any of us has ever done before. So to me, it's an amazingly exciting challenge that we're all taking on.
I agree with you. It looks like a massive mountain to climb, but that's what keeps us into the fight.
Totally.
Thank you so much, Brett, for that amazing conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.